Welcome to Lived In, a podcast series by Hemby Home Co. Lived In is all about interior styling for the ordinary home. If you live in an ordinary house on an average street and you love design, this podcast is for you. Many of us long to infuse the places in which we dwell with both style and livability. But we also have to stick to realistic budgets. What does it look like to live in a space that transitions with you as life does? How do you build equity while creating a space that truly feels like home? And what can you do to make a space yours when it doesn't belong to you? Join me, Hemby Co, a realtor, content manager, and interior advisor, and let's find out. Hello, ladies and gents. I hope we're all doing well. I am feeling extra perky today. It's somewhat unexpected, but I think it's because we are deep in gardening and planting flowers at home. And how fitting is that when this episode is all about preparing your house for the warm or the warmer months? I mean, preparing sounds silly at this point because we're basically in the warmer months. I think if you we're in North Carolina, in Pitt County, North Carolina. If you are in North Carolina or you're in Virginia potentially, or south of those, then I'm anticipating you're already seeing temperatures in Fahrenheit, high 70s to low 80s or high 20s to 30s in Celsius, maybe, south of me at least. So preparing for the warmer months is kind of redundant because you're already in them. But anyway, we are going to explore just some guiding principles. That may even be too strong of a term, principles. Maybe just some things to think about as you summer-proof or summer-prepare your home so that you can actually enjoy the outside space while it's nice and warm. Let's start with the basics. Honestly, just clean and tidy up. I spent this last weekend cleaning up our back and front porches, which I understand that is luxury, a back and a front porch. I didn't do anything crazy. I just was sweeping and wiping. If you have a pressure washer, you can pressure wash your own home. Or if you're willing to pay a little bit extra for it, you can have someone else come and do it for you, which that is luxury to me. Anytime I can pay somebody to come and do something that I could otherwise do myself with a little bit of elbow grease, that's luxury. Next up, really declutter and get organized. Clear out the clutter and reorganize things. This could just be me and my family, but we, both adults and kids, we have a bad habit of just leaving things outside or placing them outside and then leaving them there for weeks on end. Literally, as I speak, there is a long wooden beam. I don't know depths and dimensions and things like that. So maybe it's a 2x4, maybe it's a 4x4. I have no idea. But it's this giant wooden beam, probably the width of our garage, and it has probably been outside of our garage in the front of our house for at least 9 months. I did not put it there, but it has been there for 9 months. And I literally looked at it today as I took the rubbish out, and I looked at it and I was like, I have to ask Rob what this is for. Because why is it still here? Why have I not at this point just taken it to a dump? And I know what it is. It's because I don't know what it's for and I don't want to make the mistake of throwing something important away. But what are we doing with this piece of lumber? Can we please get rid of it? So anyway, we have a habit of placing things and leaving them. And the last kind of 2 weekends, I think I've gone through our back porch and cleared out things that are not supposed to be there. Moved things that have to stay but aren't serving an actual present function. I've tried to kind of hide things where necessary. And then on the front porch, I've cleared away shoes that my husband had out there for ages that I don't recall him ever actually wearing. But anyway, and I've actually put furniture that makes sense on that front porch so that we can enjoy it. So taking out things, reorganizing things, moving plants, honestly just clearing stuff that doesn't belong and putting it in its proper place. And if it doesn't have one, finding a proper place for it. That is incredibly helpful and honestly just kind of part of that first step of being able to enjoy your outdoor spaces. Kind of along this vein of clearing your outdoor spaces, throw out your dead plants. Throw them out. I don't have a green thumb. In fact, this past weekend, I was actually on Instagram stories posting about some hydrangeas that we bought from our local plant shop. It's Plant and See. Shout out to Plant and See. I'll include a link in the show notes. But we bought some hydrangeas from our local plant shop, local nursery, and we bought them on Thursday. And by Saturday morning, they already looked completely dead. I mean, maybe completely is an overstatement, but it was pretty bad. And so I posted on stories kind of saying, help. Really just saying, help me. I don't know what to do. I've Googled and YouTubed and I don't know what it is that I've done wrong. And I had moved them into the shade and dumped basically an entire watering can over them. And thankfully, hydrangeas are resilient creatures and they revived themselves. But for me, that is a very unlikely and uncommon resurrection story for plants that are in my care. That is not the norm. Most of the time, plants that I am caring for die. And I actually think this is one of those things that you either are really good at plants or you suck at them. I don't really feel like there's an in-between. They're either constantly dying or they're thriving and you're not really sure why. I think that's just the rule. But anyway, most of the time I think it could be that I'm not watering them enough. I feel like that's the most likely solution. Or they're in the wrong light, or I'm overwatering them. But regardless, if plants die, don't hope and pray that they're going to come back to life. You know, if they have been dead for a long time, they're probably dead and gone now. I do say that, very aware that I lack a green thumb, and so I could be wrong. There might be some hope for your plants, but if you've got a plant and it's been dead for, the better half of a month or the better part of a year, chances are it's probably dead, and you should just give up on that baby. So clear your dead plants and don't just clean up and clean out all of your dead plants, but actually take it a step further. When you're doing this, clean out all of your planters, clean out all of your vases, make sure that everything is ready to go and you have the supplies that you need so that you can actually start making things green and pretty inside and outside of your home. I've said it before and I will say it again because it's true. Planting flowers, prepping flowers, putting them in vases, arranging them, that is one of the greatest joys of my life. I will very happily spend an hour or two looking at all of my vases and then looking at the flowers that I have and trying to decide what goes where and what vases work best and what room they should go in and moving furniture around for my vases. I will literally do that, as insane as that sounds. In fact, I recently bought a book from Thrift Books. If you are not familiar, I will also link Thrift Books in the show notes because it's a great website for buying books secondhand. Good for the environment. Anyway, I recently bought a book from Thrift Books and it's an old Martha Stewart living book, like really old, like she looks very young. Could be pre-jail time, I have no idea. But it's an old Martha Stewart book all about arranging flowers, and I have just loved going through it and looking at the different vessels, different vessel types, different supports, and all the different things that I can use to do various arrangements with different types of flowers. So anyway, just all that to say, make sure that you have everything that you need to begin getting things ready for your plants and your flowers. Welcome to my thing of the week. My thing of the week this week is grand designs. You either know or you don't know, but Grand Designs is a TV show hosted and written by Kevin MacLeod. And when I lived in the UK, I used to watch it all the time. I can't remember what channel it was on in the UK. You'll have to let me know if you're in the UK watching it. But essentially, it's a 45-minute long episode where an individual or a couple or a family embark on a large building project or a somewhat revolutionary building project. Sometimes it's a prefabricated home, sometimes it's homes built on the edges of cliffs, just some really cool projects, and I love them. And I think the reason I love the show so much, one, it's been going for a really long time. It's probably been going for the last at least 15 years, I want to say. But I love the show so much because it captures the realities and the ups and the downs and the nitty-gritty of building a home. It is not polished. It's pretty raw. And it shows the reality of a budget going out of control and a timeline being pushed and challenged. It shows the wear and tear on finances and people taking out additional loans to cover a build that they thought was going to cost X amount, but turns out costing a very different amount. And it also shows the wear and tear on mental health. But it also just really, it showcases some really incredible and innovative design. And so it's a really fun watch. I will link to at least one of the episodes on YouTube, because that's where I've been watching them. And I think once you've seen one, you'll see more of them. So I love that they're available on there. I didn't know that there was a way I could still be watching that when I don't live there anymore. Like I said, they're about 45 minutes long. They take you through kind of the idea and the start of the project, what really is driving it, and then all the way through to the end, and you see the finished product. So it's really fun to follow along, and Kevin is a great host. All right, that is my thing of the week. Let's get back to the episode. All right, next up, set a vision. So we've talked about decluttering, we've talked about clearing the way for fresh greens and cleaning things up. Now it's time to kind of start thinking about what you want to have in place. So set a vision. Like I said in my thing of the week, I've recently been able to re-engage with Grand Designs now that it's on YouTube, and I love it. And something that I really love about Kevin MacLeod, the host, is just his personality. We are very different, first of all. He is very direct and very honest, but he's not abrasive. He's not unkind ever, at least that I've witnessed watching the show. But he just says things how they are. And he does so in a way that isn't confrontational or unkind. And in a very old Grand Designs that recently only got completed, I think they started work on it in the 1990s, and they didn't finish it until, well, they didn't get the final sign off, like the certificate of occupancy, until 2022, which is insane. I don't know that I've ever seen a project on the show that's taken that long. But he interviewed a couple who were using a spiritual guide. I think that was the kind of title of the person that they were using. And the spiritual guide essentially was helping them to meditate on their house in order to decide what the interior should look like. Now, I am not saying I'm not necessarily saying that's something that you should do. However, I like the idea of spending time actively thinking about use, or the use of a place, the use of a space, because I think all too often we're in such a heavily saturated area when it comes to media and images that we tend to think we want a space to look a certain way. We don't really tend to focus on how we want to use a space or what memories we want to create or craft in a specific space. So that being said, I think setting a vision of the outdoor spaces is really helpful. And, in a minute, I'll get into screen porches. That's really my next point. But I know for me, when we were looking at our house, ideally, I was going to spend a lot of time on the back porch because, it was screened and mosquitoes can't get to me and I can watch the kids play, and that's all fine and dandy. But my vision has had to shift. Now I will enjoy the front porch because the backyard is very much my kids' domain, and there is nothing peaceful about it for me. And as you'll hear in a second, the mosquito-free porch is a thing of the past. So now I've set a vision for how I want to use the front porch, and I'm actually going to sit on my front porch, which is kind of a laughable thing because I remember when we were looking for houses, one of the comments Rob said was, "Have you ever actually seen anyone sit on their front porch?" But now he does, and now I do too. So apparently all it takes is for your kids to take over the backyard and the front porch becomes very, very attractive. But anyway, the vision really for my front porch is I'd like to be able to sit out there and listen to a podcast, or sit out there and drink a cup of coffee, or sit out there and pray in the morning. Whatever it is that I'm doing, that's where I would do it. And I would like to do that when it's quiet by myself, preferably in the morning. Or also, taking the evening to sit on the front porch, because we're fortunate enough to live on a road that has street lights, which is really nice. So, and it's mostly a quiet road, so we can kind of sit down, have a glass of wine on the front porch, which is a really nice thing. So now I'm kind of setting up that vision in mind, and having that be the driving force in terms of what I end up putting out there. So with all that being said, set a vision for your outdoor spaces. What do you want to be doing on them? Not just what do you want them to look like, really beyond the look like, what do you want them to feel like when you sit in your back garden, for example? What do you want that to feel like? Do you want to feel like you are miles away from the center of town and you're in your own oasis? Do you want it to feel like you're on holiday or on vacation? Do you want to feel like you're surrounded by, lush greenery and nature is just enveloping you? Just how do you want to feel in that space? And then what do you want to do in that space? Do you plan to do a lot of hosting in that space? Do you plan to do just a lot of sitting and reading a book? Do you plan to get a pool? Do you plan to grill out a lot? All of these factors have to influence the design. So the design really should come last, even if there is some element of that vision that is based on something that you saw. Really, the feel has to be the leading element. And I say that because, talking of budget, as in our last episode, chances are, based on what you're looking at, if it's in a magazine or on Pinterest, you probably don't have an identical budget or completely identical taste, nor do you want to have a completely identical outdoor space. So it's worthwhile having that understanding of how you will use the space before endeavoring to create that space. 2 more things on this setting vision stuff. Number 1, don't forget to be realistic. Yes, you're setting a vision, but be realistic. As much as I would love my front porch to be this really quiet oasis where my kids never come and play and it's never loud, I also know, and I honestly love, that my kids love to spend time with me. And typically wherever I go, wherever my husband and I are, wherever we choose to go, our kids are likely going to follow at some point and migrate to that place. And so I anticipate that even in my desire for that to be a relaxing space, and it will be, I have to recognize that kids will also be there. So I'm still not choosing certain items. I'm not filling it full of things that are easily breakable, and I'm still making sure that it's a child-friendly, child-accessible space. Which, shout out to our episode on kid-proof versus kid-friendly. I will link that because it's a really good episode for talking about designing around kids. Number 2 on this vision stuff, think about how your space will work with the weather. When you're setting this idea of vision, you have to bear in mind where you live and the elements. Just because it's summer doesn't mean that it's going to be sunshine all of the time. There is probably going to be some rain. So how can you design your space so that it works even when it rains? At the first sign of rain, are you going to have to drive home from work to bring something in? Or if it looks like it's going to be windy, are you going to be frantically moving things inside? You have to think about what's out there and how it's going to interact with the elements, so that it's actually a functional space and not one that you have to kind of consistently be worrying or be concerned about because of the things that are on or in it. So for this reason, actually, make sure that you have outdoor lighting that actually is designated for outdoors and isn't an indoor fixture just placed outside. Make sure that outlets are properly sealed if they're outside, and especially if they're going to be exposed to water, they need to be properly attached. If you have fans, make sure they're properly attached to the ceiling. I've made a conscious choice. It's a small one, but I think the idea of a mirror on a back porch is a really sweet idea. However, I don't think it will hold up in the weather that we experience and just with my children. And it's going to get broken by something, so I'm just skipping it. Even if you have, a bar cart outside, for example, maybe you don't have a glass one, or maybe you do. It depends on where you live and how you live and what your porch looks like. But these are just really some things to bear in mind as you're setting up the vision. All right, let's talk about screen porches now. I don't know where you live, so I don't know what it's like where you are. And I know when I lived in the UK, it wasn't quite like this. And I know when I lived in Sweden, it wasn't like this. But where I live now, in eastern North Carolina, and to a certain extent when I lived in Florida, although I don't remember it being quite like this when I lived in Florida. But where I live now, Pitt County, eastern North Carolina, mosquitoes are vicious, vicious predators that willfully target innocent people minding their own business, and I do not appreciate it. When we first moved into our house, we had a fully enclosed porch, and I talked about this a bit earlier. 2 of the 4 walls are the walls of the house, so those are solid walls. The other 2 walls are screens, completely screened from floor to ceiling, and that included a screen door. And I want to say within 2 days of living in our house, our kids had ruined the screen door. Yes. So it had a hole in it, and which, at the time when we moved in, I think it was February or March or something like that. So we didn't have mosquitoes flying around. I was still very upset that our screen door was ruined because I like having a screened porch. But my husband, God bless him, he went and bought a new screen and he put it back in place. And, it's not hours worth of work, but it requires some patience. It's not a fun job. He did it. It's a bit finicky. You have to pay attention to what you're doing. But he made it work. He put a new screen in the door. He rehung it. It was great. It was back. And then within another few days, emphasis on days, not weeks, not months, days. Ooh, God bless my children. Within another few days, there was another hole, a new hole. And so, I said to the kids, this is why we can't have nice things. So we decided to just take the door off. But then we kind of thought to ourselves, well, we can't just not have a screen door because we're going to get eaten alive in the summer. We've lived in North Carolina for a few years. We know mosquitoes. We know that they are savages. And so my husband found the solution. I think it was him. It could have been me, but I think it was him. And it's basically a screened curtain that is magnetic. So you walk through it and then it immediately closes itself back up. It's very child friendly, very easy to use. So we put that in place instead of the door, which we still have, but we've just kept off because clearly the kids cannot handle that kind of responsibility. Opening and closing a real door the right way. Oh my goodness. No way. So he found this screen curtain that's magnetic, and that worked for a while. And then actually we found in the heat, the adhesive, I'm not sure exactly how it works, but it melts. And so that didn't really work as a solution either. So we threw that one away. And we also discovered in that whole process, I'm not sure exactly where we discovered this or at what point we discovered this, if it was before the magnetic curtain or during, but we found out that our kids had also been crawling through the screen walls of the porch, not just the screen door, but the actual screen walls. They were crawling through them. And so basically there was no integrity in the screen walls either. They have holes in them and they've ripped and torn. And so all summer long, when my kids were complaining about how they got bitten by mosquitoes, I would say, I'm sorry, but you did this to yourself. And the sad part about that is that when we bought our house and when we looked at the screen porch, we really pictured our summers and mostly our spring leading into summer, not the height of summer because it's horrifically hot and humid. But we really pictured our springs sitting on that back porch, screened in nicely, while the kids play in the pool, watching them, staying cool under the fan and having a glass of wine, that kind of thing. And evenings on the back porch after the kids go to bed, having a glass of wine again while they sleep and chit-chatting. But needless to say, we're not doing any of that now because there is no integrity in the screen and we have no door. So, after my really long story, here's my point. Protect yourself from the elements. If that is mosquitoes, then protect yourself from mosquitoes. If that is really, if there is really strong light that is coming through, then get the right kind of blinds that will keep the light out. Protect yourself so that you can actually enjoy it. Don't you want to actually be able to enjoy it? I think it was something I learned when I lived in Sweden, because it's basically winter there for 6 months out of the year, minimum. Something I learned was that you either embrace the weather or that you suffer miserably through it. And that is everything from extreme heat to minus temperatures or single-digit temperatures in Fahrenheit. Really, you have to have the right clothing to survive in the weather. And you have to have the right setup at home to survive in the weather and actually enjoy the weather instead of resisting it and hating it. Speaking of having the right setup at home, there are services where you can pay people. This is maybe not news to anybody, but there are services now that you can pay somebody and they will treat your garden or treat your yard so that it's not filled with mosquitoes and you don't get eaten to death. So that's also an option. We've actually tried to get hold of a few and haven't had a response, which you would think they would want, but who knows? I will keep following up on that. But yes, there are services that you can have and they'll come and spray and they'll make sure that it's a place where you can happily reside. So we had our back garden sprayed because we're also trying to avoid ticks for obvious reasons. And so you can do that where you have your yard sprayed for pests and different types of critters and things like that, so that it's a safe place that everybody can enjoy. That's really important to me, especially on the ticks. Having kids, and my kids like being outside year round. Doesn't actually matter if it's cold outside, they will still be outside. Granted, North Carolina is not exactly Colorado, so it doesn't get to snowy single-digit temperatures in terms of cold. But my kids pretty much choose to be outside consistently all year round. Especially in the summer, it's nice to know that they have a place that they can safely play. All right, this is our last point, but it's kind of a mammoth one. Furnish appropriately. All right, so it's time to furnish. You've laid the groundwork. You've made room for things that you didn't need. You've cleared things out. All of the dead plants are gone. You've gotten all the vases ready. You've figured out how you're going to use all your spaces. You've looked into that screen porch or had the yard sprayed. And now you get to enjoy it all. Now you just need things to sit on and things to serve from. You need plants in your empty vases. I mean, well, do you need plants? I actually think, and I hope to have someone on next season on the podcast to talk a bit about this, but plants, I'm fairly certain, do enhance your sense of mental health. So you do need them. They'll boost your health and happiness. But anyway, a few tips for furnishing appropriately, as I like to call it. Don't be like me. This is number one. Don't be like me when you're buying plants. Make sure that you know where they thrive and where they don't, and just how to keep them alive. If it helps, you can stick cards into each one saying on the front what it is and then on the back how to take care of it. That could be something that is helpful. Whatever it is that will help you to remember, and this is to me as much as it is to you, to me, to you, to me, to you. Anyway, beyond that, when it comes to furniture, don't put indoor rugs outside. Don't even put washable rugs outside. Get outdoor rugs. The type that you can spray down or pressure wash and you can get all of that gunk out. They don't hold odors. I'm not doing a rug in my screened porch because my kids leave their shoes everywhere and constantly drag mud, and I get worried about dog poo and stuff like that. So I'm not having one. But in my ideal grown-up house where I don't have little kids, there will be a rug in my screen porch. And I personally really like the things that are of the jute variety. But obviously just go with whatever it is that you like that fits in your color scheme and works for the size of your screened porch, if you have one, or your front porch, or wherever you're putting said rug. Now, when you're looking at furniture, and even if you're not buying full-blown pieces of furniture, if you're just, buying some outdoor cushions or an outdoor tablecloth, choose fabrics that are very forgiving and are less likely to be bleached by the sun. I always tell people to get sunbrella fabrics. They are great outdoor fabrics, and you don't have to just get sunbrella. There are a lot. I mean, I think even Target, and I'm pretty sure Tommy Bahama, they'll do outdoor cushions and seat cushions that have a strong outdoor fabric that many times is often odor resistant and water resistant and just wipeable. So those are great options. I said that's so weird. Wipeable. Wipeable. There are also other retailers like Crate and Barrel or West Elm and even IKEA where you can purchase an item and then you can choose what fabric it comes in. And many times there will be an option for a fabric that is, wipeable and that kind of thing. If you already have, really nice furniture that you love and it is washable and whatever it is that you want to use, there are also some sprays that you can purchase. I'll make sure to add some links to those in the show notes. But there are some sprays that you can purchase and you can spray your furniture to kind of stain proof it and water seal it and keep it looking fresh to care for those items if they're going to be in the sun. Also, speaking of being in the sun, if you don't want your items to bleach, make sure that when you're not using them, and when I say bleach, I just mean the sun kind of fades them. When you're not using them, make sure that there's a place they can go. Maybe that's a storage bin somewhere, or you just bring them inside. But the same goes even for umbrellas, which that might be new to some of you, but I wasn't really aware for quite a while that umbrellas can actually be bleached by the sun too. Naive old me. So put those down and put them out of sight and out of direct sunlight when you're not using them. Just put them up when you are. We haven't actually bought a ton of outdoor furniture in our current house. We had some in our old house, wasn't great quality, didn't come with us to our new house. But we haven't bought a ton of outdoor furniture. But when it comes to outdoor furniture, I'm fairly classic in my style. I really want something that's going to be timeless. I want something that will stand the test of time, whether it is more modern or traditional. And there are a few kind of go-to materials that I tend to lean on as a result. The first is wrought iron. I love wrought iron. It's solid, fairly straightforward to maintain. It's fine if it gets caught in the rain. You can put seat cushions on it. It's very classic. You can get it in a variety of different shapes and styles, so it doesn't have to be boring. I am open to other metals as well, but I think you have to be really picky about the quality. You don't want something that's going to rust or experience strong or severe deterioration. You want something that's going to stay looking good and something that, maybe you could just spray paint if in a couple of years you really hate the color or if it fades. I think something like that is fine. What you do want to avoid, though, with the metals is hollow metals. It's surprising to me that people would even sell this, to be honest. But I've seen a number of big box stores doing furniture that kind of looks like wrought iron, but is definitely not because it lacks the weight and it's hollow. And I'm not sure exactly what the material is, but the quality is so low. The quality of the material is so low that I do not recommend those at all. And of course, there's always wood. In terms of furniture, I love wood, and it does require a bit more maintenance, but it can be sanded and repainted and stained and sealed, etc. So it's so easy to work with, and you know what you're getting. Again, I think I mentioned this in the last episode, solid wood versus something that is hollow or some sort of composite. Not recycled. Recycled wood is good, but composite wood I would probably avoid. And then the last material I'd recommend that is pretty classic outdoor furniture, again, easy to maintain, is rattan? 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 I don't know. How do you say it? I'm telling you, being an expat has really messed with my pronunciation of so much. Anyway, rattan. Rattan furniture. I think it's a great outdoor solution. It's easy to hose down. It can be painted, although I don't actually like it painted. But it is easy to kind of hose down and clean and pressure wash, and it will look good as new. You can replace seat cushions and that kind of thing. And it's a nice solid set. Pretty timeless. I think the bistro chairs are probably the most popular, or among the most common popular styles. Very Serena and Lily, Lulu and Georgia-esque. The blue and white and the brown bistro sets that are Parisian looking. Not really my style, so I don't really use it, but I very much appreciate it. I don't have any dislike of it whatsoever. I just know it's not what I gravitate the most towards. But again, it is great outdoor furniture, easy to dress up or down, very pretty on its own. Sometimes, like us, you don't purchase new outdoor furniture. Sometimes you inherit outdoor furniture, or sometimes you already have something, and even though it's not really what you really like, you don't want to spend a ton of money on replacing a perfectly functional outdoor set. In this case, there are a few different options that you have. On the one hand, you could try and sell them on Facebook Marketplace and then replace them with something else that you really like. Another option is to leave everything exactly as it is, which, is probably not what you're going to go for, but that's a fine option. And then another option, which is kind of a halfway point, is to work with what you've got and try to dress it up or cover up some things. One of those is plastic surgery. That's, out with the old, in with the new. One of those is just leaving everything as it is and hoping for the best. And the other one is just putting some makeup on it and slapping a pretty dress on, changing the haircut. That's kind of the medium option. And if you listened to the last episode, you'll know that I don't really like temporary solutions for permanent things. So I don't want peel and stick tile, for example. However, I think it's different if you're talking about furniture that you have that serves its function but isn't aesthetically exactly what you want. I think that's slightly different. Again, it's just adjusting the haircut, putting some makeup on, changing the dress. So I still don't think you should do temporary fixes. So please don't, paint the wood or whatever it is. But I think that there are ways that you can kind of distract away from the fact that it's not the furniture that you really like. So, for example, at our house, we actually inherited our outdoor furniture, and I've wanted to get rid of it since we moved in. Literally for the longest time. Every time I say for the longest time, I think of the song. Oh, for the longest time. Anybody else? Anyway, I wanted to replace it for the longest time, but it is completely fine outdoor furniture that I would never pick out of the shop. And it's kind of this browny grey metal, solid metal though, with a woven backing. It's not a rattan or however you say that word. It's not that kind of backing. It's some sort of heavy duty plastic, I imagine. And then the table that comes with it has the same kind of browny grey metal legs. It's a circular table with a glass top. And yeah, I don't like the colour. The shape is okay, but the furniture style is just not my style. And, it works. It's here. It fits, even if, it's not what I would pick. I also think it's personally too big for our back porch, but it works. So rather than replacing it, which we probably still will at some point, for right now, my goal has just been, how can I make it work? So, is that from, oh my gosh, Make It Work? What was that called? The runway one with Christian Siriano? I'm going to have to remember this. Crazy Dress... Rent the Runway, Runway Design the Runway. What is it called? You're gonna have to send me a DM or something to let me know. This is gonna drive me crazy. Make It Work. Project Runway. Good grief, what a tangent. Okay, sorry. Right now my goal has been, how can I make it work? Project Runway. And so to make it work, what I'm doing is buying a tablecloth that's going to cover the table so that you don't look at the feet of the table, because who cares about those anyway? And then I'm going to buy cushions for the chairs that are beautiful in their own right and that go along with the tablecloth enough that I'm not just focused on the chairs. And so, the chairs are really comfortable and they're sturdy. They're not a cheap compromise in any way. They're just not my style. So having a cushion on them that kind of goes along with, but not as matchy-matchy, I don't like matchy-matchy, with the tablecloth will help me to not just focus on how I don't like the chairs every time I look at the back screen porch. For our front porch, we actually have 2 more of those chairs, but we also have 2 folding wooden chairs. And I've just purchased a small wooden table, and it's just to sit out there and have coffee. It's not to sit out there and get work done. So I feel like I can compromise and have our 2 wooden chairs that we have that match, that aren't as comfortable, and sit on those. So that's kind of an option for you to explore as well. Don't feel like you have to throw everything out and replace it. See what you can make do with and move things around, and don't be afraid to do that. Well, there you have it. That's it for this week's episode. I hope that was helpful, and I would love to see what you guys, or hear what you guys are doing with your outdoor spaces. I hope that this summer you get to actually really enjoy them, whatever that looks like for you. I will be back in 2 weeks' time with another episode. I have contemplated back and forth whether or not I take a break for the summer, and then maybe a month I take off. But otherwise, we're going to just keep on going because I enjoy talking with you guys, to you guys, not really with you. And I think there's still some really great stuff of value that I can share before we get into season 3. So keep staying tuned, keep checking your app. You can sign up on notifications if you want to be notified when new ones come out. But otherwise, I will be back in 2 weeks' time and we'll chit chat then. Have a great week.